Snow fell in heavy sheets, covering the alien world in silence. The sky was gray, and the wind cut through armor like a knife. A human soldier named Daniel stood near the transport station, his breath fogging as he waited for a shuttle. His armor was scratched from battles he no longer wished to fight. The war between species had ended months ago, but the memories still lived in his scars. He only wanted to leave this frozen outpost behind. The transport station was busy with aliens of many kinds. Merchants carried boxes, children huddled in cloaks, and guards patrolled with cold eyes. Daniel had grown used to their stares. To them, humans were still outsiders. Tools of war, not friends. He stood apart, alone in the snow, wondering if he would ever find peace. It was then he noticed an old alien struggling at the counter. The alien's skin was blue and wrinkled, his hands shaking as he tried to pay for a ticket. The machine rejected his old currency again and again. Other travelers pushed past him, muttering, not caring. Daniel's instinct told him to look away, but something in the old alien's tired eyes held him. He looked not just poor, but forgotten. Daniel sighed and stepped forward. "Let me cover it," he said quietly. The alien blinked in surprise, his glowing eyes staring into Daniel's. For a moment, it seemed he would refuse, but his trembling hand lowered. Daniel pressed his card to the scanner. The machine chimed and the ticket printed. The old alien held it as though it were more than paper, as though it were life itself. "You shouldn't have done that," the alien whispered. His voice was raspy but strong. Daniel frowned. "It's just a ticket." The alien gave a faint smile that carried both sadness and mystery. "Nothing is ever just a ticket, human." Daniel wanted to ask more, but before he could, the ground shook beneath them. At first, it sounded like distant thunder. Then came the shadow. The sky above cracked open as 3 massive warships descended through the storm clouds. Their hulls glowed with blue fire, their engines roaring across the valley. The crowd screamed and scattered. Guards shouted orders, but their voices were swallowed by fear. The warships were not simple patrols. They were elite carriers built for conquest. Their arrival could mean only one thing: trouble had come. Daniel grabbed the old alien by the arm and pulled him away from the open square. "Move!" he shouted. The alien stumbled, but his eyes never left the ships. "They are here for me," he whispered. Daniel froze. The words were almost lost in the wind. He looked at the alien, confused. "What do you mean?" The alien's gaze was fixed on the descending giants. "I knew this day would come. I only did not expect it so soon." His voice was steady, as though he had been waiting. The warships landed outside the station, shaking the ground with their weight. Troops poured out, armored in dark steel, their weapons glowing with cold light. They moved with precision, scanning. The crowd searching. Daniel's heart pounded as he dragged the alien behind a stack of cargo crates. He could hear the soldiers' voices, speaking in a language sharp as knives. One shouted, "The exile is near. Find him." Daniel's mind raced. Exile. Were they talking about the old alien? Why would elite ships come for a frail elder who could barely buy a ticket? None of it made sense. Yet the way the alien's eyes glowed with quiet knowledge told Daniel it was true. He had helped someone important, someone dangerous. He had no time to regret it. The soldiers were sweeping closer. The alien gripped Daniel's arm. "You chose to help me. That choice binds you now." His words struck Daniel like a blade. He wanted to pull away, but something in the old alien's tone held him. It was not threat. It was fate. Daniel's soldier instinct screamed to run. But his human heart refused to abandon the one he had just helped. He gritted his teeth, nodding. "Then we survived together." The snowstorm thickened, as though the world itself wanted to hide them. Sirens blared across the station. Families rushed into shelters. The soldiers spread like shadows, their weapons humming. Daniel peeked around the crates, his pulse fast. The old alien stood tall beside him now, no longer trembling. His presence felt heavier, almost regal, like someone who had once commanded armies. Daniel finally understood. This was no ordinary elder. He was someone the galaxy had forgotten. But the warships had not. As the soldiers drew nearer, Daniel tightened his grip on his weapon. He knew a new war had just begun, and he was standing in the middle of it. Not by command, not by orders, but by choice. The choice to help an old alien buy a ticket. A choice that was about to change everything. The storm grew harsher as Daniel guided the old alien away from the transport station. Snow whipped against their faces, and the sound of engines rumbled through the valley. Behind them, soldiers marched in tight formation, scanning the area with glowing visors. Daniel's boots crunched on the frozen ground, his heart pounding with every step. He had no plan, only the instinct to keep moving. The alien followed without complaint, his breath steady despite his frail body. They reached a ridge outside the station, where the wind howled between jagged rocks. Daniel pushed the alien against the stone wall, keeping them low. "Why are they after you?" he asked, his voice sharp. The old alien looked at him calmly, his glowing eyes piercing through the storm. "Because I carry what they fear most." "Memory," Daniel frowned. "That's not an answer." The alien gave a faint smile. "Not yet, but soon you will see." Daniel wanted to demand more, but movement below caught his eye. Soldiers fanned out across the snow, their weapons raised. They moved like hunters, and Daniel realized the entire valley was closing in. His grip tightened on his weapon. He had fought wars before, but this time there was no army at his back, no commander giving orders. Only him, and the alien who seemed to carry secrets heavy enough to bring warships down from the sky. The old alien noticed his fear. "You could leave me," he said softly. "You owe me nothing." Daniel shook his head. "I bought your ticket. That means I'm in this now." The alien studied him with quiet respect. Strange. Most humans take, few give. Daniel gave a grim smile. "Maybe that's why I'm still alive." Their eyes met for a moment, and something unspoken passed between them, a bond born not from blood or duty, but from choice. The soldiers' voices carried on the wind. Daniel knew they couldn't stay hidden. He motioned for the alien to follow. As he led them deeper into the ridge, they slipped through narrow cracks in the rock, snow falling on their shoulders, the storm covering their tracks. The alien moved slower, but never complained. Daniel noticed his posture. Frail though he seemed, there was strength in the way he carried himself, as if he had walked through storms far worse than this. They reached a small cave, its mouth hidden by a frozen overhang. Daniel guided the alien inside, scanning the shadows for threats. The cave was dark and cold, but it gave them shelter. Daniel lowered his weapon and finally exhaled. The alien sat on a rock, his glowing eyes dim in the shadows. For the first time, Daniel saw his exhaustion. He wasn't just old, he was carrying the weight of a past too heavy for one being. "Who are you really?" Daniel asked. His voice echoed against the stone. The alien's gaze did not waver. "Once, I was a voice in the council. I spoke for those without power. That made me dangerous. So they silenced me, erased me from memory, and cast me into exile. They thought I would die in the silence of forgotten worlds." His tone was calm, but every word carried sorrow. Daniel frowned. "And now they've come back for you." The alien nodded. "Yes, because I remember what they fear the most, the truth." Daniel leaned back against the cave wall, trying to piece it together. The council, exile, truth. It sounded like the beginning of another war, one he never asked to join. But he couldn't shake the image of the alien struggling at the ticket booth, ignored by everyone else. He thought of how easily he could have walked away. Yet here he was, hiding in a cave hunted by soldiers. His choice had already written him into this story, The alien studied him in silence. Finally he spoke. "What is your name, human?" Daniel hesitated. "Daniel," the alien repeated it slowly, as if tasting the sound. "Daniel, you carry yourself as one who has fought much, yet still chooses kindness. That is rare in this galaxy." Daniel gave a short laugh. "Kindness doesn't win wars." The alien's eyes glowed brighter. "No, but it ends them." Outside, the rumble of engines grew louder. Daniel peeked through the cracks of the cave and saw drones sweeping the valley with searchlights. They moved with precision, scanning every ridge and hollow. Time was running out. He turned back to the alien. "If they find us, we're both dead. Do you have anywhere safe?" The alien nodded faintly. "Yes, far north, there are ruins older than memory. If we reach them, the storm will hide us." Daniel's jaw tightened. It was risky, but better than waiting here to be found. He pulled the alien to his feet. "Then we move." The alien placed a hand on his shoulder, steady despite the storm. "You chose this path, Daniel. Do not regret it." Daniel shook his head. "Regret doesn't keep you alive. Moving does." Together, they stepped back into the storm, the snow swallowing their shapes as the hunt closed in. The bond between them was fragile but real. Daniel had no reason to stay, yet he stayed. The alien had no reason to trust, yet he trusted. In the cold silence of the storm, their fates had already tied together, and neither of them could turn back now. The storm did little to slow the soldiers. Their glowing visors cut through the snow, and their drones scanned the ridges with beams of light. Daniel and the old alien moved carefully along the frozen rocks, their steps muffled by the storm. Every few moments, Daniel glanced back, his soldier's instincts sharp. The soldiers were spreading out, and the circle was tightening. He knew the hunt had begun. The alien walked close to Daniel, his frail body slower but steady. "They will not stop," he said. "To them I am worth more than armies." Daniel tightened his jaw. Why? What could one old man matter that much? The alien's eyes glowed faintly in the snow. "Because I carry the truth of their crimes. And truth is the one enemy they fear." Daniel didn't reply, but the words burned in his mind as he led the way north. They reached a valley where jagged ruins pierced the ground like broken teeth. Daniel guided the alien into the shadows of the stone. The place felt ancient, older than the snow itself. Strange markings glowed faintly on the walls, whispering of forgotten times. The alien touched the stone as if greeting an old friend. Daniel kept watch, his rifle raised. He spotted the first drone sweeping into the valley, its searchlight cutting across the rocks. He pulled the alien down and hissed, "Stay low." The drone passed, but Daniel knew it would return. Moments later, the sound of boots echoed off the ruins. Soldiers entered the valley, their voices sharp in their own tongue. Daniel could not understand the words, but he knew the tone hunters closing in. He gritted his teeth. They couldn't outrun them forever. He would have to fight. The alien noticed the weapon in his hands. "You have killed before," he said. Softly, Daniel nodded, his eyes cold. "Too many times." The alien placed a hand on his arm. "Do not kill for me. Kill only for the choice you made." Daniel stared at him, confused. But before he could speak, a beam of light swept across the ruins. The soldiers had found them. Daniel shoved the alien behind a fallen wall and raised his rifle. The first soldier stepped into view, his armor glowing faintly in the storm. Daniel fired. The shot cracked like thunder, and the soldier dropped. The others shouted and opened fire, bolts of blue light scorching the stone. Daniel rolled behind cover, returning fire with quick bursts. He moved with deadly precision, every motion sharp from years of training. But this time, he was not fighting for commanders or flags. He was fighting to keep one old alien alive. The alien watched from the shadows, his eyes glowing brighter. He whispered words Daniel could not hear. but they carried weight. As Daniel fought, he felt something strange, a calm strength in his chest, as though the alien's presence steadied him. He didn't have time to question it. He dropped another soldier, then ducked as energy blasts shattered the stone above. His head, the soldiers advanced quickly, their formation tight. Daniel cursed. He was outnumbered, and the storm was no shield against their visors. He tossed a grenade, the blast lighting up the valley. 2 soldiers fell, but more pressed forward. Daniel's rifle hummed as he fired, his breath sharp in the cold air. The alien crawled closer, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We cannot win by fighting alone. We must reach the ruins deeper inside." Daniel nodded grimly. He laid down, covering fire, and pulled the alien to his feet. They slipped deeper into the ruins, the storm and shadows wrapping around them. The soldiers followed, their shouts echoing against the stone. The ruins twisted into narrow corridors, walls etched with glowing symbols. Daniel guided the alien through the maze, his heart racing. The sound of pursuit never faded. The hunt was relentless. At last they stumbled into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. A broken statue towered above them, its face worn away by time. The alien stopped, staring at it with sorrow. "This was once a hall of judgment," he whispered. "Now it is only dust." Daniel scanned the entrances. The soldiers would be here any moment. He turned to the alien. "We need to keep moving." But the alien placed a hand on the stone. "No, here, I must tell you the truth." Daniel's patience snapped. "Now, we don't have time." The alien's eyes blazed. "Time is already gone, Daniel. What matters is choice." His voice shook the air, echoing across the chamber. Daniel froze. For a moment, it felt as though the ruins themselves listened. The alien stepped closer, his voice lower now. "I was not only a council voice, I was heir to the seat of power. My people feared my words because I sought peace with yours. So they erased me, and now they send their hunters to finish what they began." Daniel stared at him, stunned. The truth hit like a blow. This frail old man was no simple exile. He was royalty, a leader hidden away in the snow. Before Daniel could speak, the chamber shook with the thunder of boots. Soldiers poured in, their weapons raised. Daniel lifted his rifle, ready for another fight. The alien stood tall beside him, no longer frail, but proud, his eyes blazing with a forgotten strength. The hunt had found its prey. But this time, the prey was no longer running. The chamber trembled with the march of soldiers. Their glowing visors cut through the shadows, and the hum of their weapons filled the air. Daniel raised his rifle, his muscles tense. He had fought impossible battles before, but this one felt different. There was no army at his side, no command waiting in his ear. Only him and the alien who had just revealed he was no exile, but a forgotten heir. The weight of that truth pressed on Daniel like the storm itself. The first soldier entered, his armor gleaming in the faint light of the ruins. Daniel fired, and the blast sent him sprawling to the floor. More soldiers advanced, their bolts of energy striking the walls and shattering stone. Daniel moved fast, his training guiding every shot, but there were too many. "We're not going to hold them off," he shouted. The alien stood beside him, his eyes glowing like fire. "Then we do not hold, we move." The alien raised a trembling hand toward the statue that towered over the chamber. The ancient stone began to glow, the carvings along the walls burning. With light, Daniel blinked in shock. The alien whispered words in a language Daniel did not understand, but the ruins answered. A wave of light rippled across the chamber, forcing the soldiers back. Some stumbled, shielding their eyes. For a moment, the hunt paused. The alien leaned heavily against the stone, his strength waning. Daniel pulled him away. "That bought us seconds. Let's use them." They ran through the far passage, the glow of the ruins fading behind them. The storm outside roared louder as they emerged onto a narrow ridge. Below, the valley stretched wide, filled with alien civilians running for shelter. Above, the three elite warships hovered like predators, their engines casting a blue glow over the snow. The sight made Daniel's chest tighten. This wasn't just a hunt for one alien. It was a display of power. The entire world had been turned into a trap. The alien steadied himself against Daniel. Do you see now? They will burn whole worlds to erase a single truth. Daniel gritted his teeth. And now they'll burn me too. The alien's gaze held his. You are bound because you chose to stand with me. That choice will make you more dangerous to them than I ever was. Shouts rose behind them. The soldiers had followed through the ruins. Daniel fired a burst down the passage, forcing them to slow, then dragged the alien further up the ridge. His mind raced. Every path seemed blocked. The warships loomed above, the soldiers pressed behind, and the storm gave no mercy. For the first time, he felt the walls of the galaxy closing in. A world against them, and no way out. The alien's voice cut through his thoughts. North, there's a tower. If we reach it, I can send a signal. Allies will hear. Daniel barked a laugh. Allies? Who would answer? The alien's eyes glowed with certainty. Those who remember the old vows. Those who still believe peace is worth fighting for. Daniel hesitated only a moment. He had no better plan. Then let's find this tower. They pressed on, climbing higher into the ridge. The storm howled, whipping snow into their faces, but the alien steps remained steady. Daniel couldn't understand how someone so frail carried himself with such unbroken resolve. Every time Daniel wanted to give up, he saw the alien's calm eyes and kept moving. Behind them, the soldiers pushed closer, their shouts growing clearer. The hunt was becoming a siege, at last. They crested the ridge and saw it, the faint outline of a communication tower half buried in snow. Its spire rose crooked against the storm, lights dead, but its shape unmistakable. Daniel felt a surge of hope. There it is. But the sound of engines roared above them. A warship shifted position, lowering closer to the ridge. Floodlights blazed across the snow, pinning them in the beam. Soldiers poured from the ship's belly, descending on ropes like steel shadows. Daniel's stomach sank. They had been spotted. He pulled the alien behind a jagged rock and fired upward, forcing the soldiers to scatter as they landed. Bolts of energy struck around him, shaking the ridge. We can't reach the tower, he shouted. But the aliens' voice was steady. We must. His tone was not plea but command, a voice that had once ruled. Daniel stared at him, then nodded. Then we fight through. The ridge erupted in chaos. Daniel moved with sharp precision, every shot knocking soldiers back, every motion a blend of instinct and desperation. The alien stood close, his presence a steady anchor. Soldiers closed in from every side, their armor gleaming, their voices sharp. Daniel's arms ached, his breath came ragged, but he refused to fall. He had fought wars for commanders he didn't trust. Now, for the first time, he fought for something that felt real. Still, the tide was too great. The soldiers pressed harder, their numbers endless. Daniel dropped behind cover, his rifle smoking. The alien placed a hand on his shoulder, eyes glowing. Brighter than ever. You have done enough. If I must fall here, I fall knowing kindness still lives in this galaxy. Daniel's jaw clenched. We're not done yet. Above, the warship's floodlights burned brighter. The world was against them, the soldiers, the storm, the very sky. But Daniel felt something stir in his chest. It wasn't just duty. It was the bond forged in the snow, the choice he had made when he paid for one old alien's ticket. He stood, weapon raised, as the soldiers surged again. The storm howled, and the world closed in. But Daniel refused to let it end here. *, the chamber. shook as soldiers poured in from every side. Their glowing visors cut through the dark, and the hum of their rifles echoed like thunder. Daniel fired the first shot, striking the lead soldier in the chest. The blast lit up the ruins in blue light. The rest of the squad advanced, their formation tight, their weapons firing bolts that shattered stone and sent sparks flying. Daniel pulled the old alien behind cover, his breath sharp in the freezing air. "This is madness!" Daniel shouted over the roar of gunfire. "There are too many!" The alien's eyes glowed brighter in the shadows. "It was always going to be this way. They are not hunting me alone, they are hunting the truth I carry." His words were calm, but his voice held a weight Daniel could not ignore. He knew this fight was no longer just survival. It was rebellion against powers too great to see. Daniel tossed a grenade across the chamber. The blast shook the ruins, knocking 2 soldiers to the ground. He seized the alien's arm. "We can't stay here. We'll be buried alive." The alien nodded once, steady despite the chaos. Together they ran through a broken archway, the storm's cold breath rushing in to meet them. Snow whipped across the ridge outside, and the wind howled like a beast. Behind them, soldiers gave chase, their boots pounding like war drums. Ridge was narrow and treacherous, jagged rocks jutting out of the snow. Below, the valley stretched wide, filled with civilians fleeing toward shelters. Above, the 3 elite warships hovered like dark gods, their engines casting an eerie blue glow across the sky. Daniel's stomach tightened. It felt as if the whole world had turned against them. The enemy ruled the sky, commanded the ground, and even the storm seemed eager to hide their hunters. This was not a fight. It was a siege. They scrambled up the rocks, snow stinging their faces. Daniel kept his weapon raised, firing short bursts at the soldiers climbing after them. The alien stumbled once, his age catching him, but Daniel pulled him back up without hesitation. "Keep moving," he growled. The alien gave him a long look, then whispered, "You fight as if the world is yours to save." Daniel didn't answer, but his jaw clenched. He wasn't saving the world. He was saving the only ally he had left. Blasts of energy tore into the ridge, sending chunks of stone into the air. Daniel ducked, dragging the alien against the cliff face. His rifle hissed as it overheated, but he forced it to fire again. More soldiers pressed closer, their armor gleaming in the snowstorm. "We're trapped," Daniel muttered. His heart raced, but his mind stayed sharp. He scanned the horizon, desperate for any way out. Then he saw it, a spire half buried in snow, leaning but still standing. A tower. The alien followed his gaze, his glowing eyes softened with recognition. The signal tower. "If we reach it, I can call those who still remember the old vows." Daniel gave a bitter laugh. "Allies, after all this time?" The alien's voice was steady. "Not all memory dies. Not all hearts forget." Daniel hesitated. He wanted to scoff, but the look in the alien's eyes silenced him. There was hope there, fragile but real. And right now, hope was all they had. The soldiers pressed closer, their voices sharp in their alien tongue. Daniel fired again, dropping one, but 3 more climbed over the rocks. He cursed under his breath. "We'll never make it." The alien placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then let us try. A step forward is still defiance." Daniel looked at him, then nodded grimly. "Fine, but if we're going down, we're going down fighting." They pushed up the ridge, every step a struggle against snow and fire. The storm howled louder, as if the world itself wanted them swallowed. Daniel fired at shadows, his rifle glowing from the heat. The alien's steps slowed, but his presence grew heavier, like a leader who refused to bend even at the end. Daniel felt it. This was more than escape. This was resistance against an empire determined to erase truth. As they neared the top of the ridge, the warship above shifted position. Its floodlights blazed across the snow, pinning them in a beam of blinding light. Daniel cursed, shielding. His eyes, ropes uncoiled from the ship's belly, and more soldiers descended, armored shadows falling like predators. The alien raised his head, unafraid. Daniel lifted his rifle, teeth clenched. "Then the whole world really is against us," he muttered. The alien's reply was calm. "Yes, and yet here we stand." The ridge exploded into chaos. Daniel fired upward, forcing the descending soldiers to scatter. Energy bolts slammed into the rocks, showering sparks. The alien moved beside him, his voice strong despite the storm. "Do not fight only to kill, Daniel. Fight to keep the choice alive." Daniel gritted his teeth, not fully understanding, but he kept firing. Each shot was defiance, each breath was rebellion. And though the storm roared and the world closed in, he refused to fall. For the first time in years, Daniel realized he wasn't just fighting for himself. He wasn't just fighting to survive. He was fighting for something bigger, the bond forged in the snow, the truth carried by one old alien, and the choice that tied them together. The world was against them, but they would not kneel. Not here. Not now. The storm screamed across the ridge, drowning out every sound except the roar of engines overhead. The warship's floodlights burned white against the snow, and soldiers poured down on ropes, armored shadows landing with weapons ready. Daniel fired upward, each shot a burst of defiance. One soldier fell, tumbling into the valley below, but more replaced him instantly. The old alien stood beside him, calm even. As death closed in from every side, the ridge shook under the blast of the ship's engines. Daniel dragged the alien behind a jagged rock, bolts of energy scorching the ground where they had stood. "We can't hold this ridge," Daniel shouted. His voice was ragged, his rifle nearly empty. The alien's glowing eyes flickered but did not fade. "Then we must reach the tower. It is our only chance." Daniel peeked through the storm at the broken spire ahead. It stood crooked, half buried in snow, but its shape was clear. Their goal was close, but guarded by an army. He reloaded quickly, his hand steady despite the chaos. Years of training kept him sharp. He fired again, covering their advance as they pushed forward. The alien stumbled on the ice, but Daniel caught him. "Come on, just a little further." The alien gave him a faint smile. "Strange human. You carry me as though I were treasure," Daniel grunted. "Right now, you're the only thing worth carrying." They sprinted along the ridge, blasts exploding around them. The warship above shifted lower, its cannons tracking them. Daniel dove into the snow, pulling the alien down as a beam of blue energy ripped across the ridge, slicing stone into molten shards. The heat seared his face, but they survived. Daniel cursed under his breath. "We won't outrun those cannons." The alien raised his trembling hands, his voice low and steady. Strange words rolled from his tongue, old and powerful. The air shivered. For a moment, the storm bent, snow twisting in a spiral around them. The warship's cannon fired again. But the beam split against the wall of swirling snow, scattering harmlessly into the sky. Daniel blinked in disbelief. The alien swayed with exhaustion, but his eyes burned brighter. "I cannot hold it long. Move." Daniel nodded and pulled him forward. The tower loomed closer, its spire cracked but still alive. Soldiers surged around their black armor glowing in the storm's light. Daniel fired into their ranks, every shot precise. 2 fell, but the rest advanced with relentless discipline. Daniel gritted his teeth, his rifle nearly empty. He fought like a man with nothing to lose, but in truth, he was fighting for everything, for the choice he made, for the bond that tied him to this alien, for the truth that could still change. The galaxy. They reached the base of the tower, ducking behind its massive supports. Daniel slammed a fresh cartridge into his weapon. Now what? The alien pressed a hand to the tower's frozen surface. Lights flickered faintly, ancient. Circuits waking from their long sleep. "It must be activated," the alien whispered. His voice trembled. "But it requires two. One to hold the signal, one to guide it." Daniel frowned. "Guide it where?" The alien's glowing eyes met his. "To those who will answer." Before Daniel could reply, the soldiers surrounded the tower. The commander stepped forward. His armor blacker than the rest, his weapon glowing with deadly light. His voice was sharp, echoing across the snow. "Surrender the exile. The human dies regardless." Daniel raised his rifle. "Not today." The fight exploded. Soldiers stormed forward, their rifles blazing. Daniel fired back, dropping 3 in quick bursts. He rolled behind cover, reloading, his breath burning in his chest. A grenade exploded nearby, shaking the tower's base. The alien staggered but did not fall. His voice rose, chanting words that seemed to shake the air itself. The tower's spire glowed brighter, beams of light cutting through the storm. Daniel fought like a storm himself, every motion sharp, every shot defiant. He smashed a soldier with the butt of his rifle, kicked another off the ridge, and fired point-blank into a third. His armor was scorched, his face bleeding, but he refused to stop. "Get that signal out," he shouted. The alien's eyes blazed as the tower lit with power. "Almost there." The commander advanced, his weapon humming with deadly energy. Daniel met him head-on, their weapons clashing in bursts of light. The commander struck hard, knocking Daniel to the ground. His weapon aimed at Daniel's chest, glowing with lethal fire. The alien cried out, raising both hands. The tower exploded with light, blinding the soldiers. A beam of energy shot into the sky, piercing the storm and reaching beyond the clouds. The signal was sent. The commander staggered back, shielding his eyes. Daniel seized the moment, driving his blade into the commander's armor. Sparks flew, and the soldier collapsed into the snow. Daniel rose, panting, his body trembling with exhaustion. Around them, the remaining soldiers faltered, their formation breaking. The alien leaned against the tower, his body frail but his eyes triumphant. "It is done. They will come." Daniel looked to the sky. The warships hovered still, but the storm had shifted. Beyond the clouds, faint glows appeared, shapes descending through the darkness. More ships, not enemies but allies, answering the signal. The sky was filling with fire. Not the fire of destruction, but the fire of return. For the first time since this nightmare began, Daniel felt hope burn in his chest. The alien turned to him, his voice steady despite his weakness. "You see now, Daniel. One choice can ignite the sky." Daniel nodded, gripping his weapon tighter. "Then let's finish this." Above them, the heavens split with light as ships descended into the storm. Fire filled the sky, and the battle for truth had only just begun. Asterisk, the tower's being tore through the storm, a column of light stretching into the heavens. The snow fell in a spiral around it, glowing in the brilliance. Daniel stood at its base, chest heaving, rifle trembling in his hands. The old alien leaned against the glowing stone, his body frail but his eyes alive with fire. Above them, the 3 elite warships shifted uneasily in the sky, their engines rumbling as if sensing the change. And then Daniel saw its shapes descending. Through the storm, not enemy warships but others. Allies. The first of the new ships cut through the clouds like burning stars. Sleek and silver, they bore markings Daniel did not recognize. Yet their weapons aimed not at him, but at the elite. Warships. The sky erupted with light as the 2 fleets clashed, fire streaking through the snow-filled air. Civilians in the valley stopped running and turned to watch in awe. For the first time, fear gave way to wonder. Reinforcements had arrived. The signal had been answered. Daniel lowered his weapon, his body shaking with exhaustion. He turned to the alien. "Who are they?" The alien's eyes glowed brighter, reflecting the fire in the sky. They are those who never forgot. Old allies, bound by oaths older than this war. They come not for me alone, but for the truth I carry. Daniel's chest tightened. What truth is worth all this? The alien placed a trembling hand against the tower, his voice steady. That peace is possible. That unity between humans and my kind was never weakness, but strength. They feared it. They silenced me for it. But now your choice has awakened it again. His words sank deep into Daniel's heart. He realized then that his small act paying for one travel ticket had sparked something far larger. It had lit a fire in the galaxy. The battle above grew fiercer. Elite warships unleashed torrents of energy, their cannons shattering the clouds. The Allies answered with piercing beams of light, driving them back. The sky became a battlefield of fire and thunder, shaking the valley below. Daniel watched as explosions lit the heavens. It was war, but it was no longer hopeless. For the first time, it was a fight with a chance. A fight for something more than survival. Soldiers still surrounded the tower, but their lines faltered as their commanders in the sky fell into chaos. Daniel raised his rifle again, firing into their ranks with renewed strength. Each shot felt lighter now, as though the weight on his shoulders had lessened. The alien stood tall beside him, no longer frail in Daniel's eyes. He was not just an old exile. He was a leader reborn. His presence was like a flame, unyielding even in the storm. The soldiers began to retreat, their voices sharp with panic. The arrival of the Allied fleet had broken their certainty. Daniel and the alien pressed forward, forcing the remaining troops back into the snow. The tower glowed brighter, its hum steady, as though it too welcomed the return of hope. Daniel stood at the alien's side, guarding him as the last of the soldiers fell away. The ridge was theirs, but the battle was not over yet. Above, one of the elite warships exploded in a blaze of fire, its wreckage falling into the valley like a burning star. The crowd of civilians below erupted in cheers, their fear replaced. With courage, Daniel felt the sound echo in his chest. He realized the people were no longer looking at the sky alone. They were looking at him and the alien. Together, standing side by side, they had become a symbol. The alien turned to Daniel, his glowing eyes soft. Do you see now why your choice mattered? One act of kindness lit the signal. One bond bridged the silence of years. The galaxy will remember this, Daniel. Daniel shook his head, exhausted but steady. I'm no hero. I just bought a ticket. The alien's smile was faint, but full of pride. That is why you are the greatest hero of all. The storm began to break. Sunlight piercing through the clouds for the first time in days. The Allied ships pushed the remaining warships back, their engines blazing with victory. Daniel lowered his weapon, his body trembling with relief. The alien stood tall, the glow in his eyes steady as the sun rose. Around them, the people gathered, their voices rising in awe. Some knelt before the alien, whispering words of reverence. Others looked at Daniel with respect he had never known. The alien raised a hand, silencing the crowd. His voice carried across the ridge, strong despite his frailty. I was cast into exile to be forgotten. Yet today, I return not as ruler, but as witness to truth. This human reminded us that unity is strength, that compassion is power. Let it be known the age of silence ends here. The valley erupted in cheers. Daniel stood beside him, unsure of what future awaited, but certain of one thing: the galaxy had changed forever. As the fire in the sky faded into dawn, Daniel finally allowed himself to breathe. He had not planned to be part of this story. Yet here he was, written into its very heart. A soldier no longer fighting for flags or commanders, but for a bond that had reshaped the stars. The unbelievable truth was clear. Sometimes the smallest act, the simplest choice, could ignite a war and end it. And sometimes humanity's greatest power was not its weapons, but but its kindness,